Hey everybody, welcome to the Tortured Man Podcast. Today's episode, the assault on masculinity and other toxic trends. We're going to start today off by talking about, I think, a very misunderstood and underappreciated thing that is happening to men in our society, particularly Western society, and particularly younger men. And I think they need a voice. And we're going to try to start some interaction about that today. Chad will get first word. So, Chad, take it away, brother.
Well, it's been called the masculinity crisis, attack on manhood, attack on masculinity. It's been called a number of things. But I'm going to go ahead and throw a shout out to a young lady named Sydney Watson. She's a YouTuber who I've had the luxury of being acquainted with lately. And she raised a really good set of points recently on a little podcast she did where she talks about the feminization of America and the feminization of men at large. And she really draws a highlight on the feminization of education, whereas roughly about 80% of all educators K through 12 are females. But also she really drills down on the feminization of the home, and likewise, 80% of all single parent households are women. Those of which that do the best are educated women who've gone through feminized education. You get the point, right?
Yeah, the irony is
I'm going to
that
give you. I'm going to set you up. Go ahead, bro.
right. So the irony is the higher the education, the more likelihood that women will file for divorce from their husbands. They will more than likely get the children unless you can prove they are completely either insane or severely addicted, and that's not even
Good
always a
luck.
guarantee.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the thing that young men have done is in our Western society, and I've been married and divorced twice, men get run over by truck when they get a divorce. Basically, what you're doing is you're going to have your kids taken away from you, whether you're the better parent in the situation or not. You're going to have to beg to see your own kids. You're going to pay child support at a ridiculously high rate. You're probably, depending on state, going to also have to pay your wife, who oftentimes makes as much money as you do, and you still have to pay her alimony anyhow. They're going to be able to live in your house, and you're going to have to supply her a car. And on top of that, you're probably going to have to supply the health insurance for the children, and you're going to have to send them to college all on your own dime. So there's no incentive there. On top of there not being an incentive, is that most of these young men, our society at large, has removed men from the home, particularly the lower the income that you have, the more likely that the man will be removed from the home and the state becomes the parent along with the mother. For instance, in any state that has welfare, and because of federal dictates and regulations in those affairs, that if you are a woman and you are living because you're very young and you have kids and you're impoverished, the only way for you to collect welfare and to be able to get the benefits of it to you can get on your feet, it is law that the man cannot be involved in the home or with the children or live with you. They're out.
One quick pause. Thank you, brother, and then I'm going to set you right back up.
Sure.
Didn't Marx want to abolish the nuclear family? Didn't
Absolutely.
Marx want to make young men as unlike their fathers as possible? All right, go ahead.
Yeah.
Just wanted to say that. Let's remember Karl Marx and all this.
That's right. So one of the things that it's the dissolution of everything starts with the destruction of the nuclear family, period, end of sentence. So when that starts to begin to happen, once you have removed the father from the home, then you can systematically start to break down other things. First, get rid of the father, then get rid of spirituality. I don't care if you're a religious person or you subscribe to any particular religion, being a spiritual person that is based in morality is a very real thing and very needed by society. And now we're tearing that away too because it's easier to do. I also make this is no assumption. I will tell you flat out that while I believe that there are many incredibly great women out there who are doing the best that they can under the circumstances, and not all these circumstances, mind you, are even their fault, because they are as much a puppet in this kind of government overplay as anybody else is. But if you're going to tell me that, say, 5'4" 135, 140 pound woman is going to tell a 16-year-old, 6 foot tall, 5'10", 185 pound boy what he's going to do and what he's not going to do, good luck with that, right? That's why the father is so necessary. Our society is now set up to treat men under all circumstances as monsters. Um, we are depicted as idiots. There is no television sitcom anywhere over the last 20 years where a man isn't completely shown to be a complete moron, that he is incapable of making any decisions on his own. If he didn't have a wife, he'd probably already be dead, because that's how dumb we are. And it's insulting, frankly. I get it for comedy here and there, but it becomes a societal thing where in Hollywood, the go-to move is to always depict men as lazy, unintelligent, incapable of doing anything on their own without somebody else helping them out, and just basically being miscreants that are complete morons. And thank God women are there to save us from ourselves. And frankly, it's insulting.
Well, you touched on fatherhood and you touched on fatherless homes. And I mean, that's a massive driver of all kinds of things, waywardness, criminality, so on. But it's actually a major driver of suicide for young boys, teenage boys. Even if dad's in the picture, he's just not in the home. And mom has been acculturated to emasculate dad in front of son. And it'd be one thing if the mother is continuing to hold a good picture of dad in front of son, so that son has a good role model. But instead, mom's making dad look terrible because they're at odds. And now all of a sudden, son's role model is a piece of shit as far as mom's concerned. Big conflict there, man. And I don't think these mothers understand. Even if you can't deal with dad, mom, even if you can't deal with him and you did divorce, the worst thing you can do is defame him and beat him down in front of your son. That's detrimental to your son. You have no idea.
We have set upon for a couple of generations now in this country through the feminist movement to have a complete and all-out war on boys. From the top, the indoctrination starts as soon as they hit elementary school. They are drugged out of elementary school without any exaggeration, at almost 20 times the clip that little girls are drugged in schools. They're all told that they have ADD simply for being an energetic boy. So
you're not supposed to act like a boy.
That's right. So we start drugging you. So first off, to just feel like and react like an 8-year-old boy, that makes you bad and wrong to begin with. And then you're always told to shut up. You're always told to sit down. You're always the one getting in trouble. I mean, it is the schooling is geared towards girls. It is not geared towards boys. They are lagging behind. They're always told that they're wrong. They're always the bad guy. Society picks on men in general, which they know that they're going to grow to be. Their fathers aren't in their homes. The state pushes them out. Toxic women, which I don't even believe in, by the way, toxic femininity or toxic masculinity, but as long as everybody wants to throw the word about, we'll call them toxic women. And so they want to destroy the father so much in their children's minds that they don't take into consideration, nor do they care at the damage that they're doing. These boys are completely opting out of even wanting to be in our society today. They are told that they are no good, that they are stupid, that they cannot keep up, they're friendless. The suicide rates, you had brought up that statistic. Statistically, the highest, first off, men commit suicide at a much higher rate than women do. uh, and teenage boys at a higher rate even than that. They're literally killing themselves. And what I always found fascinating about women in this particular scenario is you're these boys' mothers, and
Right.
you're you're doing this to them. I That's the one part of it I never quite got, is that the not all, but a lot of these mothers, they're destroying their own sons, and they don't even seem to care that they're doing it. How could you have so much hatred and virtue all for the husband that you're willing to destroy your own child as a way of getting even with them? I don't understand. But suicide rates are way up for teenage and young men in their 20s. And we need to do something for this to end before it's too late. They're marrying at literally a third of the rate that they were just 20 years ago. They don't want the hassle anymore. They don't want to be in relationships. But if no society can last without a nuclear family. And every socialist Marxist country over the last 120 years, roughly, have proven conclusively that when you destroy the nuclear family, you literally destroy your entire country.
Well, that's what they are. They're destroyers. That's what Marx was. He was a
Absolutely.
destroyer. That's why he lauded Satan, because Satan is the great destroyer. That's what Marx does. Nonetheless, as far as boys are concerned and society is concerned, oh man, you said so much, and I could go in so many directions. Let me talk about petticoating. I don't know if you recall or you've heard of petticoating or petticoat
Sure.
punishment. But it was this thing that was created out of the Victorian era, where if boys didn't act in a certain quiet and sort of demure and buttoned up way, they did what was called petticoating, and they would shame them by dressing them in girls' clothes. And they would make them wear the girls' clothes until they would start adopting some of the girls' behaviors as being a little more quiet and a little more reserved, a little less rambunctious. And that was a way of sort of acculturating them into more girl style behaviors, right? So fast forward to today, and now we don't call it petticoating, but you have white liberal mothers doing the exact same thing. Recently, there's what's it called, boy dress or play dress. I can't remember. There's a children's book about being curious and cross dressing, and a bunch of mothers in solidarity, single mothers, mind you, probably most of them, in solidarity for the book, because people were kind of out, kind of like, whoa, what's going on with this book? In solidarity, they decided to dress their sons in dresses and take pictures of them with the book. Um, this shit takes place a lot. There are so many mothers who essentially Munchausen's by proxy. They are mentally ill themselves, and they make their kids into something they're not. I want to talk about in particular. There's a reality show right now going on. What's her name? Jazz or something like that. And
Oh,
I
that
say her.
transgendered boy.
Yeah, boy, the trans to girl. And her mother talks about how, the boy kind of, because it's a biological boy, at a certain point was like, dragging their feet. Mom now like threatens to go in while I guess, if she wants to be called that, she seems like a nice enough person that I would probably do that. And we'll get into the pronouns in a moment. Um, but the mom actually threatened to come in the middle of the night and dilate her fake vagina so that it doesn't close up, because she's kind of lost her, the girl now has kind of lost, or boy, whatever, has lost their sort of gumption to maintain this insanely unnatural thing. And this is a really good precursor to another story I can't wait to get into, but I think you probably got something to say. Go ahead.
Well,
Do
when
you
it comes
not?
to this
Because
jazz, it's funny that you bring up this jazz. My heart goes out to this biological male. Um, this is done entirely by the mother. I don't know exactly um, what it is with um, educated female women wanting desperately to turn their sons into girls. It's a phenomenon that
Educated. You just
escapes
said
me.
it. You just said it. Educated, bro. The academia got completely infected by this bullshit about 30, 40 years ago. We'll get into it. Go ahead.
But we had talked recently privately about this jazz character that has become a television show, and how much weight that this kid has put on in a very short period of time, which to me screams massive depression. Um, and it's because he's not going through his natural evolution of puberty, right? And so now this person who doesn't even want to identify as a woman anymore, is being forced by his mother to do so, is severely overeating, obviously has severe depression, amongst many other body dysmorphia issues. Um, and according to friends and family who aren't the mother and don't want to be identified, that that he's been suicidal. This young man is going to end up killing himself. It's going to be the fault of his mother. And you know what our society will do? Turn her into a heroine of somebody who what tragedy she went through. That even though she destroyed her own son's life, did it purposefully, did it for her own reasons, Munchausen's, as you brought up, so that she could get as much attention as humanly possible. Um, and she'll be lauded as a groundbreaker, as somebody to be admired. She needs mental help herself. This is, I'm going to say this straight out. If you are a transgender person at any age, you have severe mental illness. That's a fact. It's called body dysmorphia. The DSM 5 has had it in the book since the beginning of the book. Right? This is the diagnostic manual for all psychologists and psychiatrists. This is body dysmorphia. What I find very interesting is if this child Jazz, excuse me, would have gone to any doctor and said, I want my leg cut off. It doesn't belong to me. They would put them in a mental health facility or under psychiatric care. But if you go to a doctor and you're a 12-year-old boy and you go, oh, my penis cut off and turned into a vagina, you're like, oh, yeah, that's totally normal. Sure, you can do that. What the hell is going on? This kid needed mental help. And what did his mother give him instead? Nothing. Nothing that he can hang on to. That's why he is so massively depressed and is in a suicidal state. And she is patting herself on the back for being Mother of the Year. And the whole thing is quite disgusting as far as I'm concerned.
The same shit was happening right from the very beginning when all this stuff came to prominence. So this guy named Dr. John Money, he was the first one to really sort of pioneer transsexual surgeries, right? And he's the guy who opened the very first university based sort of transgender studies, I should say, department at Johns Hopkins University. This guy, Dr. John Money. So there's a whole crazy documentary on him. You can get it on YouTube or wherever. Actually, it's a BBC documentary. So here's the wild part. While they frequently have to, because they can't help it, it's the truth. They point out the horrific things this guy's done. They often, though, because he is like the founder of transsexual identity, gender identity, like he's a big part of gender theory, right? Steeped in Marxist tradition, right? So he also has a bunch of like underlings that he taught that have gone out to major universities, and they've all staked their entire careers on this, so they undergird everything he said. So anyway, what's this guy do? He's trying to write this new theory. He's really trying to push this new theory about how nature versus nurture. It's definitely more nurture. Gender is nurture. It's not nature. Gender is a societal construct. That's what he's asserting, right?
Yes.
So
Because
what happens
because he's an
At the
idiot.
same time, right. So at the same time, he's trying to revolutionize things, right? So at the same time, somewhere in another state across the country, two twins are born, two little boys, and they're about 6 months old when they go in for their circumcision. And the first little boy whose attempted circumcision happens to be botched, it it causes such a detrimental wound to him that it completely changed his life. And it was so bad that they actually didn't go on with the other brother, the other twins' circumcision. So they just left him uncut because it was like, oh shit. Well, what happened was they were using some sort of electrolysis sort of thing that was supposed to cauterize it, right? But instead it vaporized his entire penis.
Oh,
It just turned it into like they said it was like a burnt string hanging off his groin. And so no penis. And so the parents who are, I've not, seen any kind of interview with the dad, but the mom seemed like a dullard. Maybe she's old and she's just like senile, but she seemed like an absolute dullard, like a dumb person. Sweet person, but a dumb, easily duped person. Let me put it that way. So she doesn't know what to do with this kid now. And it's like, the 80s. And there's no like revolutionizing plastic surgery like there is today. And she doesn't know what to do. And then she sees this commercial from this Dr. John Money talking about how, nature means nothing, that you can nurture. And if you had a child that would be better off as a girl or a boy, whatever, that you could just do that. And so she's like, well, shit, maybe this guy has an idea to make my kid feel normal. So she goes there, and this guy, light bulb, right? He's thinking, shit, hell yeah, I've got twins right here. One of them has this catastrophic thing going on with their genitalia. I can convince this family to raise this as a girl, and I can prove my theory, and I have a perfect control in the brother, right? Because twin studies are great. They're great studies because they're raised in the same household. They are very alike, and if you do things differently with one and you don't with the other, it's a nice control, right? So he basically entered them right into a study, convinced them to raise this child as a girl. And they tried, and they tried, and they tried, and they brought this child, Bruce was the boy's name. They brought Bruce to the doctor frequently to get his mind control, to try to create this person into a girl. And they tried and tried, and they made like a very half-assed, very like archaic fake vagina. Fast forward to like now the kid's 13, and he's been going to this doctor all this time, and the parents have been trying to tell him he's a girl all this time, and it's not working, and he still wants to be a boy, even though he's already been castrated, mind you. I forgot about that part. They cut his balls off, gave
well, you
him a
did.
bunch of
You said you
hormones.
said you said he had a fake vagina. That pretty much sums all that up.
Well, there you go. They did everything they could and fed him everything they could, and he still wasn't comfortable because he was biologically a male, and he's just tormented. He finally, like the doctor finally, like in his last ditch effort to try to convince the kid to get a new vaginoplasty, like a new vagina, he brought in a transsexual that was trans from male to female to try to like convince him. 1 second, let's pump the brakes because I have to put this one little part in here. There was a 2 year period from like 9 to 11, I think it was, where his brother was involved in the clinical sort of stuff that was going on with this Dr. John Money, and the doctor was making them undress each other and was making them pose in sexual positions for photographs. The files of those 2 years they're sealed. You can't find them. They're at the Kinsey Institute. Bing, Kinsey Institute.
Yeah,
Hold
another
on to that
freak.
one. Hold on to that one. So, yeah, these things are heavily connected. So, what happens is the kid decides, no, I don't give a shit what this transsexual says. I don't give a shit what this doctor says. He's made me do weird shit. I don't want to do this. Told his parents, if you ever make me see this guy again, I'll kill myself. His parents go, okay, well, we don't want you to kill yourself. They're just kind of dumb. They're not mad. They're not bad people, you know what I mean? And they're like, if you want to be a boy, be a boy. So he decides to be a boy. And so now he's David. And but when they tell him, they tell him, they finally tell him, yeah, we did this to you. This happened. This bad thing happened, and then we didn't know what to do, so we decided to raise you as a girl. We're very sorry. He actually handled it better. His brother, when they told him, he snapped, and he actually his brother, he was the first one to kill himself. It was just a couple years later that the one who was trans, and they were in their I think they were in their late 20s or early 30s when they killed themselves. But it drove them mad. Meanwhile, the Dr. John Money, who created this transgenderism bullshit, he was writing the whole time that it was successful, that all this stuff was success, that it worked, that nature wasn't over nurtured, that it was acculturated, that he still drove all these conclusions home, even while these guys were alive, and they went on a campaign actually to like say no, this is bullshit. It was so bad that Dr. John Money, who came from New Zealand, the school that he was the alma mater from, they actually got rid of their gender studies program.
Yeah, they discredited. They discredited him.
Oh yeah, big time, because he's psychotic, dude.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, all of his theories are still. They're still. The whole time I'm watching this BBC documentary, again, they tripped over themselves numerous times to say, "Oh, but the theories are still beautiful. They still stand." It's like, no, they don't. He proved it himself. They don't stand. Are you fucking kidding me?
There's so many dark little secrets inside of this world. For instance, transgendered people with body dysmorphia. Let's start there. People with body dysmorphia have one of the highest suicide rates on the planet, if not the highest. But the real dirty little secret is for those who actually transgender, they have an even higher rate of suicide after they go through their transition. And the reason is because they think that that transition is what is going to fix their problems and make things go away and make them happy and make them balanced. And when it doesn't, the depression sets in at a much higher rate than it ever had before. Because these people, there's many other forms of body dysmorphia than just being feeling that you're misgendered. And I said earlier about cut off my leg. There are people that literally they cover themselves head to toe in tattoos. There's a guy out there. I remember seeing him on some documentary where he literally had all these piercings and implants under his skin and his tongue cut in half because he was convinced he was a lizard, right?
Yeah.
And he spent literally hundreds of thousands of dollars to make himself, even his eyes tattooed to make him look more lizard or snake-like. That is severe body dysmorphia. Now, anybody who thinks that you should just go chopping off boys' penises and turn them into a girl and think that's totally cool would look at that guy and go, wow, that guy needs some help, man. But they don't see it here. And it's because it's what I refer to as willful ignorance. Because you have a woke ideology, you are willing to sacrifice children to get to where you want to go. On top of all of this nonsense is the over-sexualization of children in our society because of this kind of nonsense. We need to take back a lot of things. And I think it starts with forcing our society to get back to men being men and women being women. There's always going to be outliers. What I've always said is, and I'm sure the people who are listening to this are going to think that I'm transphobic in some way, which is nonsense. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend that some of the things that we're doing are acceptable. We're hurting people, and we're deeply hurting people and children. They are not capable of making these kind of life-altering decisions permanently in their lives at such a young age. We don't even let them drive till they're 16, but they're old enough to make a decision to have their breasts or their penis cut off at 12 years old. That's absurd. It's beyond absurd. And it's disgusting that we would even allow it to happen. Thank God for states who are willing to write into legislative law, you cannot do this. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're a 25-year-old and you decide you want to do something like that, have at it, bro. You're an adult, and I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. Go ahead. But when you're 12, I'm here to protect you as best I can. I'm going to do everything in my power to protect these children. I'm going to do everything in my power to stop this absolute absurd blitz on boys to make them feel bad about themselves, to make them feel stupid, to misgender them purposely and harmfully, to move them out of our society, to treat them as outcasts. The most dangerous thing in our world is a lonely, depressed man, period. And we're creating them by the millions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like it's being done on purpose, which in kind of is. And they want this to happen.
Marxism.
It is insane. We need to get back to the nuclear family. And men, by the way, look, women and the feminist movement, for whatever you may think about it, and the pro or the con, doesn't matter to me. There is nowhere on this planet, if you are a woman, then you are safer, have more opportunities, and literally have hundreds of laws on the books to favor and protect you over men than the United States of America. So for all those women who still want to act like they're victims in this country, get the fuck over yourself. You are not a victim in this country. And if you really want to help women that are victims, why don't you take your tough old ass and all your girlfriends and go over to Saudi Arabia and have a conversation over there about it? See how that works out for you. I find it very fascinating that people are so willing to stand in a place that really isn't victimizing them and isn't doing anything harmful to them at all, to sit and scream how they're being harmed, when all over the world they could actually help people and they don't lift a single finger to do it, which makes them all completely and totally full of shit.
The most privileged person on the planet is the American white liberal female, because
Absolutely.
she can sit on her perch with all of her wonderful accoutrements and all of her safety nets and bitch and moan because she has nothing better to do. While everybody else in the world is grinding and trying to get ahead, she's just sitting up there getting fat and pointing out all the bullshit that she sees in front of her eyes, because she's got time to point out bullshit. But guess what? Like I said, it's bullshit.
And on top of it, these same educated white women are willing to sacrifice their own sons. It's
Do it all the time.
it's unbelievable to me that anybody could do such a thing. And I feel for these young men. They're ostracized. They feel outcast. The numbers don't lie. Men in this country work the toughest, most dangerous jobs. They go to war. Jordan Peterson, who I have a lot of respect for, has said that the easiest way to reset gender roles is the Third World War, which is probably coming. Because the second that happens, you'll see women and men take on their standard gender roles. Because when it comes down to the only thing that we're trying to do here is survive, then you go back to your base gender roles. Not the ones that you've made up in your own mind, not the ones that you wished could be true, but the ones that are actually instinctual to us. And that is that the men will go and fight the war, and the women will stay behind and try to hold everything together and take care of the kids, which is exactly the traditional gender role.
As long as there's enough men to be able to fight that war.
That's
If
right.
you see what's going on with our military, and with the way our culture is trying to change our military, if you've seen the rainbow bullets, if you've seen all this weird trans shit that's going on in the military, I don't know if you've heard about it, but Matt Gaetz just blew the whistle on it. They're having drag queen story hours on military bases in kids' libraries. Kids' libraries. For children, they're having drag queen story hour, right? So that means that our tax dollars are paying to groom children, because it's not that drag queens aren't even like trans people. They're just guys who are dressing sexually as women and dancing in a burlesque fashion. It's a strip show.
Yes.
It's raunchy. It's for adults. It's not
Yes.
for children. And if you're trying to push it on children, you're a fucking groomer. You're a groomer. I said it.
And frankly, if you're, I want to time check something here. This got nothing to do with our audience, but at 34, 48. I noticed on my Focusrite, I didn't have something turned on, so I want to hear the difference in my voice. So that's for me.
Roger. I'll edit
um,
that out.
so we're talking about this. This is another thing that I find very fascinating about all this. These young men, these boys that we're talking about, are not a percentage of a percentage. They're half of our population. But these either transgender or in this case transvestite, they are a percentage of a percentage, a very small percentage to begin with, and then a percentage of that very, very small percentage. And we're acting as if that if in the real world that 25, 30% of our children would be transgendered if we just let them is hokum. So roughly 3%, and all data that I've ever looked at, clear and honest data, that roughly 3% of the world's population is homosexual. Okay. Transgendered is a percentage of that percentage, a very small percentage. Now we're getting into tenths of 1%. So we're realigning laws. We're realigning how we operate as a society based on an insignificant amount of people. It would be the same as saying everybody who's born without a leg, that we need to literally redesign society entirely for them alone, which we would never do because that's not how society operates. So this is all really about the total destruction of the nuclear family. And the more ways that they have to do that, the faster that they can make it happen. Our country is in a lot of trouble. And I mean, I don't know how far we want to go down this road, but we'll probably talk about it at another date. But China, because of just how weak we are, no longer, petrodollars are now gone. Chinese just made huge inroads with Brazil and Saudi Arabia and Russia, and everything's going to be traded in their currency, not the petrodollar, which is the US dollar. That is so destructive to us. We're going to end up being Venezuela here in a few years if we don't get our shit together, where everything that you have is now completely and utterly worthless. You got $100,000 in your savings account, or say $100,000 in a retirement account, and you're in your 30s and you're hoping that it'll grow. Well, that $100,000 is now worth 10 fucking bucks, and it ain't worth shit. So how's that going to get you anywhere? Our priorities are so out of balance, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, so I just kind of want to come back to the whole like trans thing. I have an issue with the fact that you can have like a Colorado Springs shooter who did a horrific thing, awful thing. He's a fucking
Yes.
animal. It's an animal. I'll even call it an animal. But he tried to say that he was a trans person like at the last minute, right? To make a point. And everybody like poo-pooed it and denied it. Like, and now you can't find anything about that. Look it up. You can't find anything about that. But this last shooter, the Nashville shooter who killed these 3 little babies and 3 teachers, everybody's just falling all over themselves to call it a she.
Right.
That's a fucking animal, okay? That's an it. I don't give
Straight
a
up.
shit how that thing identifies. And the fact that you're all falling all over yourselves to do that, it disgusts me. It makes me sick. That's your first priority. That you give a shit how this person identifies. Fuck this animal, okay? Stop it. Stop it with your agenda. Let me just say this. If you don't meet me, if I've never met you before in your life, and and you meet me as a new person, and you're wearing women's clothing, but you're clearly a dude. You have a giant Adam's apple, and you're just a freaking obvious dude. You got a freaking 5 o'clock shadow, but you're trying to present as a woman. But let me just say that you showed up and you were very kind, and I could tell that your agenda wasn't on your sleeve, and you were just simply trying to be a human being who might be different. guess what? My natural inkling is probably going to be to try to accept you and to try to make you comfortable. But if you show up and you say, "Hi, my pronouns are them, they, and then fuckface," and if you prove to me right out the gate that you have an agenda and your only agenda is to shove your nonsense down my throat, guess what? Fuck you. I'm not calling you anything you want me to call you. I'm going to call you him, dickbag, whatever I want. Because I don't have to call you what you want me to call you. You have an agenda, and your agenda is control. You want to control me, and I see you, and I'm not going to let you do it. Okay? So that's the deal. If you are a nice person and you don't have an agenda, I'll call you Moondragon. I'll call
Right.
you
Call you whatever you want.
Fairy Emperor. What you just say it. Fine. You're a nice person. You don't have an agenda. Fine. If that makes you comfortable, we're cool. But if you have an agenda and you want to bludgeon me over the head with that, and you want to use this fake little made up little safety net that you've created for yourself, I'm not playing your game. Fuck you. You're a dickbag. That's your
Agreed.
gender. Dickbag.
So this is what I'll say about this shooter. I could really give a rat's ass whether they were gay, whether they're transgendered, or whether they think that they're a troll living under a bridge. I don't really care. You killed 3 children and 3 adults who are 100% entirely innocent of whatever insanity in your mind is going on.
You're
You are a
shim.
monster. You're a piece of
Yeah.
shit. And the idea that the simple idea that because they are being misgendered, this is the lead story on ABC News,
Mm-hmm.
how they're being misgendered. Fuck you and fuck your misgendering. I could care
Right.
less. This is a psychopath who killed 3 9-year-old children and 3 adults for no other fucking reason than they were crazy. What
No,
the
no, no.
hell is
No, no,
happening to them?
no, 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 no. They were crazy for sure. To be sure, you have to be crazy to kill little kids like that.
Sure.
But they were also driven by an ideology.
Well,
The
sure.
fact that Nashville recently changed, the fact that Kentucky recently, Tennessee, I'm sorry,
Tennessee,
recently
yes.
changed their laws so that you can't do genital mutilation or chemical castration to minors. The fact that they decided to protect minors from psychotic parents who are doing life-altering things to their children, they decided to actually codify protecting children. And you decide that the best thing to do in retaliation to that is to kill children. Cute. Okay.
Yeah.
Again.
And by the way, here's another thing that's really
Yeah.
pissing me off about this whole situation too, is how in the hell is this not a hate crime? This
It's a
person,
fucking hate crime.
that's right. This person specifically targeted a private Christian school and went
Mm-hmm.
after the pastor's children.
Yeah.
One of
Hate
them,
crime.
which she killed. It killed. The insane person with the gun killed, right? So
The
we're
filthy animal.
and we have news agencies that are more outraged that this person is misgendered than that they killed 6 people, 3 of them children.
So
Anybody
now
who,
you
if you identify at all to this belief system on this far left side, and you know me, and you believe that they need to be gendered correctly, or any of this makes sense to you, that they're misunderstood or somehow they're a victim, do me a favor and never, ever, ever fucking talk to me again, ever in your life. I want nothing to do with you. You are a fucking monster. You might as well come into my house and tell me you're a proud member of the KKK. You'll get exactly the same reception. Get the fuck out of my house.
And this is the cancer that is Marxism, man. This is what they've done. All of the Marxists over the centuries now, they've infiltrated everything. And the whole idea is to make what's up is down, what's right is left, to just bend everything, to twist everything so that nobody has any sort of solid feelings about objective truth, right? So the idea is it's nihilism, right? The idea is that there's no objective truth. Everything's subjective. Everything is fluid. Well, guess what? Foucault, right? Foucault, one of the major creators of queer theory and of gender studies, giant Marxist, right? Let's see. Kinsey, obviously. Moni. By the way, Foucault was a giant pedo. I don't know if you knew this, but he did a big study in Tunisia on Tunisian boys. And there's hundreds of them that will recount how they were molested by Foucault personally.
Right.
He was a giant pedo, and that's the thing. That's a running theme with all these guys. Foucault, Kinsey, Money, all proven pedos, um, and
Kinsey
they're
was a
all.
sexual pervert who was trying to justify every perversion that he had. That's what he was doing.
What's funny about Kinsey is that he was an entomologist and a zoologist, so he was studying spiders and animals, and then somehow parlayed that into this sexual studies thing. I remember because I used to study it, as you know, at Indiana University. My building was right next to the Kinsey Institute. I could look out my window every day from my office and see the Kinsey Institute. And we used to laugh. We called it the Smut Dungeon
Yeah.
because it's known
You gave me the
as this
tour. I saw it.
place, right? It's known as this place. Well, we didn't go in Kinsey because you have to have special access there. That
No,
shit's
we didn't
locked
go in the
down.
building, but you showed me the building.
I guarantee you that place is like the trove of honeypot bait for all the CIA plots where they rope all these pedos into being informants and doing things for them. They just get it all from Kinsey. Anyway, that's my theory. But the smut dungeon in Kinsey that nobody has access to, but probably the CIA and so forth. Um, Kinsey was doing all kinds of wild shit with kids, and Foucault was too, and all the stuff that from all those studies that you can't see, it's all in Kinsey. And like I said, the whole thing that was done against those kids that John Money did, where there was 2 years of all this sexual molestation and these pictures and shit, where those 2 years of those files are gone, it was given to Kinsey and it's all sealed. You can't get it. Shocker. So Kinsey is like, I think what we should do is like, I don't know, maybe not we, because I don't want to be implicated in any of this. Hopefully someday a group of mercenaries from another country that's more moral than ours will come in and like take over Kinsey and like unlock everything and then like show everybody all the disgustingness that goes on in modern American academia.
Yeah, it is. Wait, I mean, it's we're at the crucible, right? I mean, either we would start to retreat and get back to the founding principles of this country, which are steeped in morality, or we're going to probably have to fight to carve out a spot for ourselves because this has been going on now for a very long time. There is no going back. We have a
We're
system that is
fucked.
so completely and utterly out of control at this point that I don't. They would rather burn everything to the ground than have a conversation about how we're going to move forward. And this is literally our government, regardless of party. And there are some good people in our federal system, but not many anymore. Um, those people literally want to destroy all the foundational principles of this country. By the way, they've done a great job. Our Bill of Rights literally no longer exists. It's a joke. And now with this, if, I don't know how many people out there in the internet world have actually read the alleged TikTok bill, but that bill has very little to do with TikTok and everything to do with being able to imprison you for 20 years and fine you up to $1 million by saying things that the government doesn't like. That's what this is all about, right? That part of it. They're going to control the narrative. And the narrative they want to control is this, all this nonsense we're talking about is how they want to thread everything as being normal. And anybody who thinks normally is actually the enemy.
So I happen to know somebody I'm close to, a very close individual, a very close friend, who is had been in the medical system, medical field for a long time, medical career, and they've since switched hospitals after a very long time at another one, and so now they have to be reorientated, right? They have to go through through orientation. Well, orientation long, arduous, and often nonsensical. And then sometimes in this day and age, you get to shit that's even more wild than you would ever expect. So, here is a screenshot of one of the orientation panels that this person had to look through on an undisclosed medical system. Under section blah blah blah, discrimination based on an individual sex is prohibited. Further, providers cannot deny or limit sex-specific health services based solely on the fact that the gender identity or gender recorded for an individual does not align with the sex of individuals who usually receive those types of sexually specific services. Example, this would be a prohibition. You're not allowed to do this. Example, denying a transgender male a pap smear. So you are prohibited from denying a transgender male, so a dude who's presenting as a female, you can't deny them a pap smear. Well, how the fuck do you do a pap smear on a dude? Tell me. How do you do that? I have up his butt? Do you stick this shit up? I'm just blown away, dude. This is how COVID and this is how all this can happen. It's because we're willing to look at penises and go, okay, we can do a pap smear on your penis, and you're a medical professional? Come on, man. We're done, dude. We're done.
Yeah, there's no doubt that we are across the threshold and on the downhill slide. I think it's hilarious to me that Joe Biden or his or the people who support him can say that he has put our country in a better position worldwide, and we have more respect than we did under Trump. I mean, it's just so totally absurd. They live in a world that does not match reality whatsoever. And not only does it not match reality, they have no interest in it matching reality in any way, shape, or form. As they do with Marxism and socialism, they are just going to frame their argument however they want, no matter what. They did it with COVID. They're doing it with this transgender play that they're doing now. And they're going to, after this plays out or it gets tired or boring for them, then they'll find something else. But it's never going to end. Because at the end of the day, the only thing that the vast majority of people, not just elected politicians, but the bureaucrats and the lobbyists that run the show and write the bills and the regulations, at the end of the day, they're not doing anything out of ideology. They're doing everything for power and money, and it's working. I mean, we're the only forward-thinking country in the world where if you're a elected politician, insider trading is completely legal and even encouraged, so that you can enrich yourself beyond your wildest dreams. Because there was a woman sitting senator. Her name's escaping me now, so I'm not even going to pretend that I can remember. But she put when SVB went down, okay, so it was not SVB in this particular case, it was Signature Bank. She took a shit ton of money, and Signature Bank had gone from, they were trading at like $9-10. Then Signature Bank failed and they dropped, they plummeted. She knew that the bank was going to be taken over by a much, much larger bank. Don't quote me on this. I think it's Chase Manhattan that came in and bailed them and bought them out. She knew that was going to happen because she had people on the inside tell her that. She shifted all her money into Signature Bank, and less than 16 hours later, her shares of the pennies on the dollar were all worth $9 and change, just in less than 1 day. She took and literally made her entire net wealth 8 times higher, 9 times higher than it was just 1 day before. And she legally is allowed to do that. And it's shocking. They have that Nancy Pelosi bill, or it's dubbed the Nancy Pelosi bill, that sitting senators and congressmen or anybody in Washington who in the cabinet, they're not allowed to at any time trade, because they have information. They write bills and regulations and laws that can massively influence our markets. And they shouldn't be allowed to trade on that information and enrich themselves. Nancy Pelosi, 30 some years ago, went into Washington. a wealthy woman, a rich woman. Let's put it this way. She was a rich woman. And now after all these years, she's a massively wealthy woman because she's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. When she walked in, she wasn't even worth $1 million 30 some years ago. That's what that insider trading does. She only averaged making about $120,000 a year the entire time. How does she turn it into that kind of wealth? Because she had all the insider trading to be able to do that very thing, and it's legal. And I don't often agree with AOC on anything. She was the one who put forward this bill with others, but she was one of the signees onto the bill. And I was impressed by that because she was saying, as a sitting congressperson, I shouldn't be allowed to trade on this information. I agree. You shouldn't be able to do that.
But anyway, well, AOC signed on early on and then she backed off. So that's why that all fell apart, because AOC is full of shit. But anyway.
She's full of shit.
So back to the subject, the shrink. Another thing that's, I think, harming men is the shrinking of taints. The space between your butthole and your junk, it literally is shrinking. They've been doing longitudinal studies on males for decades, and the taint is shrinking, and that space, that the measure of that space is a very strong, not just a correlate, it's causal. As that space shrinks, the sperm count shrinks, and so the ability for men to procreate is going way down, and that's due to
that is true.
All kinds of stuff. Plastics is a big part. The chemicals, Monsanto. I can't wait to get into that with Jeff. All the pesticides, all that stuff. All
the drugging of our children.
Soy, all the drugs. And also, honestly, the acculturation, because culture does play a role.
Oh, sure.
But all this stuff is playing a role in making less masculine and less fertile men. And as a society, we're on the decline. So,
do you remember? We've talked about this just between the two of us, because you remember that commercial I used to talk about, because I loved it so much, where the guy on the commercial goes, "Your grandfather had more testosterone than your father, and your father has more testosterone than you." And that's true. It is. So we are from a different generation than these young guys are today. They have less than we do. And you're right.
Guarantee fucking tea, pussies.
So, right, I think we're from Gen Xers are the last generation that were still willing to mix it up. We know in my day, you got into a fist fight, the police were never involved, right? Like you and your boy, whether he was your friend or not, and you knocked each other's lights out and you fought, and these things happen, and then you ended up having a beer together or whatever, right? You just figured things out on your own. Now that never happens anymore, because these kids, they're scared. These kids today, we were allowed to be boys, right? I was allowed to be a boy in my neighborhood. I grew up in a neighborhood with a hell of a lot of little boys, and we all grew up together, and we all did crazy boy shit together, and nobody tried to shut us down or make us feel bad about it. But that is not how it operates anymore. Now we treat these young men like they're miscreants because they just simply want to be a boy. They want to do boy stuff, and they're treated horribly. They are shut down. They are told that they are wrong. They are told that they don't have that what they're thinking is wrong, how they're acting is wrong, that anything they say is wrong. They want you to shut up. They want you back in the corner. They want your head down, and they don't ever want you to be a boy. And by the way, if you keep acting out after that, we're going to put you on drugs for the rest of your fucking life. And then that's going to make you a zombie. We'll be able to re-educate you. And that is also one of the reasons why literally 8-1 boys want to transgender to girls instead of the other way around. And that's because these kids are being convinced that the only way they're going to ever be treated well is if they turn into a girl, because otherwise they're just a monstrous little bastard boy who society doesn't want, because that's what we tell them.
Every time they act like themselves, they're called out and they're pulled aside and they're chastised. And I tell you, as a father of a 4-year-old boy who's in preschool right now, he's been in a lot of trouble lately, and it's because he's rambunctious, and that's because they have him in this freaking classroom all day. They don't go outside. They don't do shit. So it's been winter. When it's like finally warm enough, and I guess the teachers are comfortable, they'll take them out. But until then, they don't. And these boys are just like pent up, and they're going nuts. And so, you know, my wife goes in and she hears this whole like spiel about how my son is, a little bit much and blah blah blah. And on her way out the door, there's this really sweet old lady who works there too, and Miss Dog, and she's like, "Hey, I want you to know, it's not his fault. Boys are not built this way. They're not meant to be in little cages like this. They're hunters and gatherers. They're supposed to be out having fun and blowing steam off. This isn't really right for them, so it's okay." And my wife is very thankful to hear that. But as somebody who's studied human nature, child development, and all that stuff for quite a while, man, I can tell you it's the damn truth. Most boys, and it's not all, there's a spectrum, obviously. There's some boys that aren't as boy and masculine as others, but the bell curve is there, man. And the average of boys, school has been turned into something that isn't, it doesn't coincide with boyhood. And that's just one element of ruining these kids. I can't honestly, I just wanted him to be there because we plan to homeschool him anyway. I'm not sending him to public school. Pretty soon he'll be old enough to be starting kindergarten, and now it's my turn. But, I wanted him to go somewhere and get a little bit of foundation with some socialization and so forth. It's already apparent to me that this box isn't good enough, that it's going to trap him and it's going to cause problems for him the same way it did me my entire upbringing. I was a bad kid because I was trapped in this little box and I had so much more to do. And yeah, I'm not going to do that to my boy. I'll just say that.
Well, good on you. I'll bring this back one more time to the thing that appalls me the most is that this is being perpetrated onto these boys in our society primarily by their own mothers. Mm-hmm. Here's the truth. Single mothers have to take responsibility for the fact that they have done, historically, a lousy job of raising children on their own. If you come from a single mother who has never remarries or ever has even a stepfather in the home, your incarceration rates go through the roof. Your suicidal rates go through the roof. Feminism has protected single mothers in this country. If you are the primary caregiver, if you're the one who are raising these children, if you're the one who is involved in their everyday life and you are the one who is responsible for them, and they turn into murderous thieves, rapists, suicidal, depressed people, then who the hell's responsible for it if the mother's not? Because you're the one who's there. And we're just letting them off the hook and acting as if somehow they don't deserve any of the blame or even a portion of the blame. I'll be the first one to tell you they deserve 100% of the blame. You opted out of marriage. And here's another little dirty secret is that 70%, a little over 70% of all divorces are filed by women, and educated women over 90%. You are putting yourself in this very position. You are the one who are using your children as weapons against your ex-husbands and boyfriends. And then these boys are growing up. They're isolated. They're scared. They're lonely. They're opting out of society. They have a much higher criminal rate, and they are much more likely to commit suicide and have severe mental instability. This is 100% on the mothers.
Yeah,
when are we
too.
going to act like they're the ones who are responsible for this? It's not the father who's not there. How can he be responsible when you won't let him in? By the way, marriage isn't supposed to be an institution. where you get divorced as oftentimes as you want or run out on your marriage constantly because you want to treat it like boyfriend girlfriend shit when you were in high school. Oh, things aren't going the way I want, so I want a divorce now. That's not the institution of marriage. It's not how it works. Frankly, my thought has always been when it comes to marriage that getting married should be free. Getting divorced should cost $100,000 per participant. Unless you earn over $1 million, then it should be $1 million per participant, unless you go through a minimum of 2 years of psychological evaluation with a approved psychologist who specializes in marriage. And then he says, you or she, yeah, you guys should get divorced. Okay. Not everything can work. But we walk away from marriage in this country as easy as we walk from one fast food restaurant to the next one, right? Oh, the line's too long there. I'm going right over here. And then you find out you really don't like that food. So you want to go back over to the other one. That's not the way it's supposed to work. We take marriage in this country, the institution of marriage, and we treat it like a sham, like it has no value whatsoever. And because we do that, well, now it has no value.
Destroy the nuclear family, right? And
Correct.
here's the thing: all these women who think that they can just shunt the man and do it on their own, and you cited the perfect stat there with the educated, quote unquote, indoctrinated women. Uh, they were educated in the same American universities that are fully indoctrinated with Marxist bullshit. They went through the gender studies programs, all of your education programs, all of your psychology, all of your sociology, all of the things that women gravitate towards. One of my favorite comics, it might have been a Far Side, it was so perfect. It's a picture of like a job fair, and before the job fair, let me start with this. The first frame is a bunch of like dykey looking women with like spiky purple hair holding signs protesting, saying, "We need more women in STEM, get the patriarch out of the sciences," and all this crap, right? And then the next frame is the like college fair where they're talking about different disciplines you can study. And there's a big ass long line of these same dykey haired women standing in front of the gender studies desk, and then there's like a STEM desk, and there's like three nerds, and they're all guys. There's like 100 purple-haired women in front of the gender studies desk, and then in front of the table for STEM, it's these three dorks,
Right.
dudes, and it's so perfect, right? That like it's a perfect
Dorky dudes.
depiction. But those same women were just bitching about the fact that there wasn't enough women in STEM. But they themselves chose not to go to STEM because STEM is fucking hard.
Well,
And
yeah.
guess what? You can go to gender studies, dye your hair purple, and spout a bunch of bullshit, and people will applaud you. So that obviously that's the route to go. So that's what they've done. And so many of these education majors have minored in gender studies, or they've at least taken these classes because they're part of the curriculum. They're part of what you are required to take. And so they're all learning Marxism, critical race theory, critical theory. If it says critical in it, it's Marxist. If you don't know this, trust me, I do. I spent so many years in academia. If it says critical race theory, critical criminology, critical whatever,
It's
and
not
it's
so critical.
critical means Marxist. That's another word for Marxism. Queer theory, gender theory, all these theories, they're steeped from Marxism. It all
Sure.
comes from Marxism, people. It 100% does. So all of these women who've decided to bail on these men and think they can do it better and they can raise these boys better, who don't. They raise pieces of shit most of the time. Not all the time. There are some phenomenal mothers out there who have done it on
Sure.
their own,
Absolutely.
and I applaud them. I'm not taking anything away from you guys,
And
but there are
by the way, not
so
to
many
not
that
to,
have not.
yeah, not to interrupt you, Chad, but because I talked um, at length just before you on this, and I want to make something very clear. There are a lot of amazing mothers, but for those who have failed, that you are 100% responsible for your thing. I know amazing women in my own family who were treated like total dog shit by men who ran out on them and left them holding the bag. And for those men, fuck you too.
Well, and you know what? To make your point, the reason why Ed's saying "fuck you," and the reason why Ed isn't pointing out the dad who's absent, because he obviously he should be called out too. but oftentimes he's been like disbanded and like blocked out. Maybe even a PFA or something has been filed, so he can't even come near. Um, but Ed has been in the opposite position where the toxic female has bailed out on him and his boys, and he's been left to raise men. And as someone who got to know his youngest boy Eric, who's unfortunately no longer with us, rest in peace. As someone who got to know him as a man, he was a fucking man. He was a stand-up man. He was the epitome of man. And everybody who knew Eric will say nothing less. And the reason why is not because of his mother. She was non-existent. To the extent that she was a toxic person. The reason why is because his dad had the sack to raise him, to make him a man, to do all of that, right? And I've never once heard Ed try to blame any of the shortcomings or any of the challenges he ever had with Eric on his non-existent mother. He would put it all on his own shoulders.
That's right.
Because he's the one who's taking that on. And so that's his point. So if you're sitting here hearing him and going, well, what about the dad? Why aren't you saying the dad's fault? Well, because the mom decided that she was going to take care of business, and she didn't.
Yep.
That's his point.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and I'll say this: everything you said about his mother is 100% true, but I will say that Andrea did a pretty good job
He had a
as a
stepmother in the meantime, by the way. Yeah.
And while Andrea and I have our issues as well, I will say that she was pretty good to Eric, very good actually.
Yeah.
And he respected and
loved her. And I witnessed that. And I'm not taking anything from her, but you know what? She followed your lead in all of that.
Well, yeah. But she'd have to. She wasn't smart enough to do otherwise.
Well, regardless of how you feel or the dick shots you want to take at your ex, my point is, I'm not trying to take anything from her. I'm just trying to say she took on the appropriate role, which is you're the father, I'm the step parent, and I'm going to follow your lead on this. And you showed her what, and she did a great job. Don't get me wrong.
So, she did. All joking aside, she did. She stepped in and she took that place, and she was actually empathetic enough to understand when to do the mothering and then when to just be his friend. So I'll give her that.
Yeah.
And this is how I know, as a matter of fact, I'm not blaming all single women, obviously. I'm just saying that our society is now dictated. We have way more single women than we ever had in any time or point in the history of this country. And the outcome of that circumstance and the numbers that are associated with it are appalling and disgusting. And women need to step up and they need to take responsibility for the fact that they have done a terrible job overall. And the reason is because men and women are both needed to raise children. That is why the institution of marriage is so important. And we've gotten away from all that. We've literally destroyed the nuclear family that has brought on the precipice of all of these problems that could be fixed. If you just simply go back a couple of generations, it was different. You know, when I was a kid growing up in the 70s, when there was a family in my neighborhood that we were very close with, they were the first and the only family that I was connected to in that neighborhood that got divorced. And it was shocking. Like everybody was like, oh my God. Like I was like, I don't know, 9, 10. I didn't even know you could do that, right? Because we never saw it. You know, my parents are still together. My parents' best friends who lived in that neighborhood, my dad's best friend, Red, passed away, but they were married for over 50 years until he passed away. Our buddy Ed, who I grew up with and was one of my best friends and still is, Ed's parents, until his mother recently passed, they were together for well over 50 years. My aunt and uncle who were in that neighborhood, Joe Chaka's, his mom and dad were in that neighborhood. They were married till his father passed away for well over 50 years. I mean, the whole damn neighborhood did, right? And that's why, if you look at all their children now, all of them in their 40s and their 50s, maybe some slightly older. They've all done well. I can't think of a ne'er-do-well amongst any of them. They've all done very well because they came from strong, good nuclear families that had a mother and a father.
Speaking of ne'er do wells, this guy named Karl Marx, he was
A
a fucking
ne'er-do-well,
ne'er do well. Just
fucking ne'er.
the consummate ne'er do well, right? And such a bitter little bitch of a ne'er do well that all he could do is like worship Satan and write about destroying society. So
Right.
anyway, with that, I will say we're getting close to wrapping here, but I want to make sure I get
Sure.
one last point in here before we get to this. Let me just talk about something here that I think is very important to drive home. All right, look at me, everybody, closely. Bring it in. This is the sweet irony that's going to let you sleep tonight. You're going to close your eyes tonight when you hit the pillow and you're going to go, ah, in spite of all the bullshit, all is right with the world. And the reason why is because no matter what that happens from this day forward, I can promise you that the highest accolade, the best moniker, the number one highest title that Hillary Clinton has ever held is secretary. Secretary Clinton, congratulations.
Yeah. So, I off subject. I want to thank the douchebag prosecutor in New York for guaranteeing that Donald Trump's probably going to win this next election because
Yep.
this man is a complete and total fucking idiot. By the way, there is not a single thing that Trump did that is actually even a crime. Look, I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. I don't care if you like the man or don't. Personally, I don't. I don't like bullies, and so I don't think Trump's like some great guy. But I can tell you right now, if you think that our politicians can use the court system and do witch hunts to the tunes of well over $100 million now of taxpayer money, all to try to keep this guy from running again, it proves two things. That one, you're willing to use the political power of your party to destroy other human beings for no other reason than because you don't like them, which makes you a fucking shittard. And the other one is you're all but guaranteeing that this guy that you hate is now going to be probably get reelected because there is going to be literally tens of millions of people who are on the fence who are going to look at this and go, this is really messed up. And they're gonna do it by voting, even though the election will probably be stolen anyway.
I assert to you that the person behind all of this isn't Alvin Bragg, the prosecutor. It's George Soros.
It's George
And,
Soros.
and I assert to you that George Soros actually would prefer it if Trump won. Because if Trump wins, that is actually the most detrimental to the fabric of our society. And Soros wants to see America dismantled. He wants to
Yes,
see us
absolutely.
completely destroyed and fall apart. He's a Marxist. Imagine that. So with Soros and his Marxist endeavor, he keeps feeding this beast that will continue to feed the beast that is American division. Trump is a great divider in spite of the fact that he's a divisive character and he loves living in that area, in that space, but the divisiveness, the level of divisiveness he's reached is not his own creation. It's been created on his behalf. It's the juxtaposition that the left has created. They have made this man into a martyr. And the more they do this shit, the more they drive people like me, who would rather not even vote and have anything to do with it, to just go and vote for him to just give you a big old middle finger. Because as much as I don't give a shit about Donald Trump, I don't like him, and I wish he would go away, the more you try to assassinate him, the more I want to go, oh, okay, well, I guess if you're against him, then I know you're against me, so me and Trump must be sort of kindred spirits. Here you go.
Right. So, look, I'm no fan of the man, like I just said, but it is a middle finger to go and vote for this guy. I think DeSantis did a good thing too, because Trump spends a lot of time in Florida, Mar-a-Lago, obviously, and he said it's entirely up to Trump if he wants to turn himself in, but this state is not going to turn him over to the state of New York because this is horseshit. right? And everybody knows that this is horseshit. This doesn't come as a shock to anybody. There are just a very large selection of our population who have been convinced that Donald Trump needs to go to prison or be sacrificed to, I don't know, the libtard gods or whatever it is that they think. The level of hatred for him is palpable, obviously. And what I find really fascinating is almost everything they think they know about Trump has been a complete machination of the mainstream media. They give you a grain of truth and then a giant heaping helping of bullshit on top of it. And then the bullshit becomes the truth when in fact none of it's true. What Trump did for this country comparatively to what is going on with the Biden administration is massively different. And we would not be in on the precipice of World War III if Trump was president of the United States. It wouldn't be happening. Right. We have a senile, ridiculous joke
And that's
of
nothing.
a president
And
who
that's not a
thought,
benefit.
by the way, right. No. I want to get this out real quick. If you support
Yeah.
Joe Biden and you think what he did just prior to his press conference after finding out that these 3 children and 3 adults were slain for no apparent reason other than by some deranged piece of shit lunatic, and he's in there joking about ice cream, could you imagine if Trump would have done a thing like that? Could you imagine the outrage? We would still be talking about it 24/7 for the next 6 months. That's all they would talk about. Biden, what he did was the most disgusting thing I've ever seen any president do. He made light of the death of 3 9-year-old children and 3 adults who didn't do anything wrong to a single person other than just get up and go about their day. And then they're defending this transgender person and making them a victim. Look, I'm no Trump fan, but I can tell you this. I will vote for Trump as often as they'll let me. I'm going to vote for Trump a lot. And you know how I'm going to do that, Chad? I'm going to register as a Democrat so I can vote 400 times. And I'm going to register all 400 votes for him because the Democrat Party at this point, they're I don't even have words. I don't even have words to say how disgusted and fed up I am with dealing with this administration. Joe Biden should be in prison. His son should be in prison. We do not have laws that affect everybody. If you are a Democrat politician in this country, there is no chance that you will ever go to prison for any of your malfeasance. Yet, since 2015, Trump has been brought up, tried to be impeached twice. They have tried to throw everything they can at him. They have gotten not a single thing to stick up to this point. I hate Democrats so much because they make me like Donald Trump. That's why I hate them more than anything else. You're making me like a guy I don't like because you are that ridiculous. Everybody in the Democrat Party needs to go fuck themselves really hard, get their head right, and stop worrying about their own petty little shit and use their brain and do what's best. You want a socialist society that's about the collective. Maybe you should think about the collective for 1 second other than yourself. Selfishness, by the way, is not Marxism. Selfishness is not socialism. Yet the Democratic Party is the most self-serving, selfish fucking bunch of pricks I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's a political party. And that's politics for you, baby. That's right. All right. Well, on that note, folks, I promise you we're going to do something a little more lighthearted next week. We can't keep going down this serious road. Oh, come on. We're going to try, damn it.
Okay. All right. We can do something lighthearted right now. So last week we talked about football. So we'll just spend 1 second.
Well, we're an hour and 24 minutes in now, Ed. So yeah, I don't know that anybody's still sticking around, but you can try.
Aaron Rodgers, I talked about him last week, and the reason that the trade hasn't happened yet, because we had a discussion about it, is simply because they haven't been able to iron all the deals out between the Packers and the Jets in trade value. But the June 1st, because that was the primary thing we talked about that I wanted to bring up, whatever deal is going to be done has to be done before June 1st or the Packers aren't going to be able to make a trade with anybody because of the massive amount of dead cap space that's going to be laying around. It has to be done before that. So I did a little research into it because I was a little confused as to what was going on and why anything happened. They have until June 1st to get it figured out. And I imagine not until after the draft are we going to have any kind of conclusion. And that's it. We can talk about football next week.
Agreed. Yeah, it's going to be after the draft before Rodgers gets moved for sure.
Yep.
So,
all right, man. Well, it was a good show.
all
Thank
right,
everybody
brother.
for tuning in. My last word on this is love your sons like you love your daughters, and society will be a better place.
Amen. And teach your sons to look out for other people's daughters. Teach your sons to be chivalrous. Teach your sons to be masculine. Teach your sons to be protectors, defenders. Teach them that it's okay. And if that a society tells them, idiots in society tell them that that's not their place or that they're asserting patriarchal dominance or some bullshit, just laugh it off because all he's doing is the right thing. If your son is looking out for people who are less powerful than him physically, whatever you want to say, he's doing the right thing. And that's manhood, man. That's legitimate being a man. Being a man is using whatever abilities you have, the strengths you have to defend those who have less of those strengths and abilities. And that's the marker of a good man. And
Absolutely.
so to take away the idea of masculinity is to take away the idea of protecting people who you have the ability to protect. It's basically like saying, no, just be a little bitch and sit by and watch people be abused. Yeah. That's not how I'm raising my boy. That's not how I was raised. And sorry if you don't like it, but we are the strong men that will bring the good times. Hallelujah.
Well, and I'll finish with this. If you have boys, let them be boys. There's an old saying that goes, boys will be boys. You know why? Because they're boys. What else are they going to be? So stop trying to turn them into girls and let them do what they do best, which is being boys because that's what they are.
Amen. All right, folks. And with that, thanks for tuning in. Hang out. Check it out again next week. We'll see you soon. Later.